The forum will now hear the National Voluntary Review by the Lao People's Democratic Republic, and I'm pleased to invite His Excellency Salim Haho Kamaseth, a Minister for Foreign Affairs, to make the presentation. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished delegates, it is my great pleasure to represent the Lao PDR to present our first VNR at this year HLPF. The Lao government has always attached great importance to the full and effective implementations of the Sustainable Development Goal. Since the adoption of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the Lao government has shown its strong political will towards achieving it. In these connections, SDG National Steering Committee, chaired by the Prime Minister of the Lao PDR, was established along with its secretariat, and SDG, a focal point across relevant ministry, has been also set up, reflecting the national ownership of each SDG. In addition, the first round of localized indicators of SDG has been integrated into our 8th National Socio-Economic Development Plan, which I will later on elaborate more in the slide. We have launched two pronged approach, namely evidence-based and whole of society, in line with the principle of inclusiveness, transparency, and participation. Advocacy, awareness, raising campaign has also been launched to ensure that all stakeholders are aware of the goals and objective of the 2030 agenda, which laid a solid foundation for a fruitful consultation process. 2030 agenda was adopted at a very opportune time when the Lao PDR began to develop its 8th five-year socio-economic development plan, which runs from 2016 to 2020. And SDG indicators were streamlined into the national plan, with more than 60% of our national socio-economic development plan indicators are SDG-based. This large percentage demonstrates the commitment of the Lao government towards attaining a 2030 agenda. The 8th National Socio-Economic Development Plan has been developed in accordance with the 3 pillars: economic, social, and environment. Let me run you through some of the progress and challenges that we are facing as we implement SDG over the past years. For outcome number 1, economic development. Under these current plans, we have witnessed significant progress in annual GDP growth of 7% during the last 5 years. We see hydropower sector has been a major source of GDP over the past 2 decades. About 92% of households across the countries have access to electricity. For instance, in 2016, it's reached to 84.5% of villages. All these have access to the road as well. However, there are some challenges that we are still facing now, namely widening inequality between urban and rural development, rural population, which is one of the critical issues that the government needs to address. The awareness of using technology is relatively low, especially in the rural area. Therefore, the usage of wood and charcoal in daily life is still high, which might affect health condition. In terms of social protections, those working in the informal sector still do not have access to it. It is partly because of employers, individuals themselves do not subscribe to a social scheme. Many SME still face difficulty in getting access to finance, and qualified to work are still limited. On the social development, our national poverty rate has declined over the past almost 25 years. It reduced from 46% back in 1992 to approximately 18% this year. In this area, Laos has achieved this set target, and we will continue to ensure that poverty rate continue to decline. Another area of progress we have made is in the under 5 mortality rate, which has been dropped more than half from 1990 to 2015. In education, primary school net enrollment rate has also reached about 98%. So this progress was a continuation of implementation of MDG, that some of the targets have been transferred to SDG. However, despite this progress, some challenges remain. For instance, a road accident had doubled since 2006. The volatile weather condition has made people depending on subsistence agriculture activity at risk of falling into poverty, especially in the rural area. As regards outcome 3, environmental protection, the Lao PDR is currently embarking on sustainable urban transportation project in the capital as part of the green growth strategy. Early this year, Luang Prabang, which is the World Heritage Site, received the ASEAN Environmentally Sustainable City Award. With its rich natural resources and untouched natural sites, Lao PDR has developed its own roadmap for strategic development of ecotourism clusters and tourism corridor. Some challenges has been recorded that include increasing number of urban population, which call for effective urban management planning. Many of existing government methodology and data collections on environment are still not in line with international standard. SDG localization needs to be continued at all levels, particularly SDG 12. Now let me move to a cross-cutting issue. What are the progress and challenges? In terms of cross-cutting issue, when we look at the gender equality and partnership form the basis and foundation for the 3 pillars of development. In the region, Laos is among the countries that have the highest share of women in National Assembly, which account for about 27.5%. In fact, our national social economic development has already set a very ambitious goal to have 30% of women in National Assembly in the next 5 or 10 years. Nevertheless, access to education and health by women and girls, especially in the remote areas, is still limited. The utilizations of appropriate technology and innovation are still limited. Secure adequate finance to support SDG implementation remain challenging. So these are some of the challenges that we are still facing. Now let me turn to SDG 18, which is localized and it tailored only to Lao PDR. It's called Life Saved from UXO. This has been introduced taking into account specific development challenges in the country. You may be aware that Laos is one of the most bombed country in the world. The bomb that dropped in Laos equal to the bomb drop during the World War II and World War I combined. Therefore, even today, Laos has been impacted by the remnants of war, and it's not only impacting the people, but it's entail a very large or extensive consequences that directly have impact on development. For instance, contaminated area cannot be cultivated. Children cannot go to school because schoolyards are still contaminated by cluster munition or UXO. Therefore, the government has already decided to make sure that the impact of UXO is addressed before any development project can be conducted or developed further. Back in 2010, the government has adopted MDG 9, which directly addressed the impact of UXO. But MDG 9 was only in 2010, and we have only 5 years to implement. Therefore, once SDG was adopted, and we transfer the target and objective of how to address the impact of UXO into SDG. So SDG 18 is specifically tailored to the Lao PDR. So since its adoption back in 2016, and now it's already 2 years, some progress has been made in terms of implementation of SDG 18. Of course, there are still challenges that needs to be addressed in the coming years. If you see outside of this room, you can see an exhibition stand over the past few days showcasing the impact and the amount of burden that the Lao government is bearing in terms of addressing the impact of UXO. And early this afternoon, we also organized a side event which attract quite a number of participations of delegations attending this high-level forum. That's having said the progress and challenges in terms of implementations of SDG. These are clearly reflected in our voluntary report that are submitted to the United Nations and presented to you today. Now, what lessons what lessons that we learned from the implementations and we can take out from the voluntary report that we submitted? There are 5 lessons that we have learned. Firstly, political will and commitment of the government is of paramount importance to the implementation of SDG. I think as far as Laos is concerned, from the beginning, we already, the process of mainstreaming SDG targets and goal into our national social economy development, that really reflects the commitment of the Lao government to fully effectively implement SDG in the coming years. Secondly, localizing SDG at the early stage is very crucial. In the process of localization, it is critical to note that it has to be sequenced and integrated into the National Development Plan strategy to ensure the fruitful implementation. As I outlined earlier, that now for Lao PDR, 60% of all indicators, SDG indicators, have been integrated into our 5 years social economic development plan running from 16 to 20. And the rest, 40%, would be integrated into the next circle of our National Social Economic Development Plan, which is 21 to 25. Thirdly, retrieving data to support the indicators of SDG can be very challenging, as the methodology and circle of data are something not available. The administrative data is vastly different from the central data. Hence, administrative data needs to be harmonized and streamlined, strengthened, and institutional and statistical capacity need to be enhanced. Fourthly, the collaboration and coordination across the ministry between central and local level are the key in implementing SDG. Lastly, funding is one of the key issues across the above-mentioned lessons learned. I just want to stress that Lao PDR, as still a list of countries, require substantive funding to make sure that we can fully implement SDG. In summary, the key challenge of preparing VNR can be categorized into advocacy, awareness, capacity building, and funding. For advocacy and awareness, many of the non-government sector are still unaware of 2030 agenda and SDG. Reaching the most vulnerable group in remote areas is still challenging. As for capacity building, we still need to continue to equip the line ministry with relevant tools and knowledge so that they can contribute to the process of SDG implementation effectively. Lastly, funding for SDG implementation is still proven to be challenging, especially data collection and regular monitoring to ensure the transparency and objective of the disaggregated data as a better result. While for the future direction, I think localize and implement SDG to achieve 2030 agenda through integrating SDG integration into the next 9th and 10th National Social Economic Development Plan. We would re-look into SDG roadmap as a guiding principle to achieve SDG. We would work closely with our development partners, international organizations, and other stakeholders. Work with both local and international experts as our consultant. And of course, we'll build a network of strong SDG technical working group across the line ministry and all stakeholders. So with that, I would stop here and stand ready to respond to any question asked. Thank you.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Foreign Affairs of Lao People's Democratic Republic for the presentation, and I now invite the delegation to have an interactive dialogue with the presenting country. And I want to remind again the delegation that limit the statement to 2 minutes each. I now give the floor to distinguished representative of Thailand.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I would like to congratulate Lao PDR for the excellent presentation of their VNRs, which have inspired many of us in this room in our efforts towards achieving the SDGs. I wish to comment and address the questions to His Excellency the Foreign Minister of Lao PDR. Your country serves as a good example of countries in specific situations committed in realizing the SDGs. Thailand and Lao PDR, as neighboring countries and ASEAN members, share close relations in many ways, including through South-South and triangular cooperation. And we look forward to further strengthening our partnership with Lao PDR in order to achieve sustainable and resilient development in our region. Besides, from what we have heard from the presentation today, may I ask Your Excellency to shed some light from the experience of Lao PDR as LDC and LLDC country on the challenges and measures your country has taken to address those challenges in the implementation of the SDGs. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Thailand. I invite the representative from Myanmar.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to Your Excellency, Mr. Minister, for your very inspiring presentation. I also wish to congratulate the delegation of the Lao People's Democratic Republic for the successful presentation of the VNR and for the achievement at various levels in all 3 dimensions of the 2030 agenda. I am pleased to note that the synergies between the 2030 Agenda and the National Socio-Economic Development Plan are well recognized in the Lao PDR, and that good progress has been made in economic growth, infrastructure development, promotion of ecotourism, and protection of ecosystems in particular. I would appreciate knowing what steps the Lao PDR is taking to ensure sustainable, responsible, and environmentally friendly investments for the successful implementation of the SDGs. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Myanmar and now invite the distinguished representative of Vietnam.
First of all, we would like to congratulate the Lao PDR on the first voluntary national review, which is very impressive and informative. We welcome Lao has made remarkable progress in many areas, such as poverty reduction, enrollment in primary schools, healthcare, etc. As presented, Lao PDR was among the earliest countries to localize the SDGs and integrate them into its national planning framework. So can you share with us lessons learned and best practices in localization and streamlining SDG in your national socio-economic development plan? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Vietnam. Now I invite the distinguished representative of Singapore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Singapore joins earlier speakers in congratulating the Lao People's Democratic Republic, a fellow member of ASEAN, for undertaking its voluntary national review. We thank the Honourable Minister for the informative presentation. We note from the presentation the efforts Lao PDR has made at promoting sustainable tourism, for example in Luang Prabang. Could His Excellency share how Lao PDR is able to maintain a balance between increased numbers of tourists and safeguarding the pristine environment and charm of Luang Prabang? We take this opportunity to wish Lao PDR every success going forward. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Singapore. Now I invite the representative of Canada.
I want to thank Lao People's Democratic Republic for presenting your national voluntary review today and for demonstrating a strong commitment to addressing the devastating impact of unexploded ordnances on civilians in your country, including through the dedication of a specific national SDG, SDG number 18. Canada was pleased to participate in a side event earlier today with Lao on the development impacts of unexploded ordnances. Having now heard your VNR presentation, could you please tell us more about the challenges the government of Laos has faced in implementing SDG 18 to make life safe from UXO?
I thank the representative of Canada, and now I invite the representative of India Major Group.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to present. On behalf of the NGO Major Group, I'm particularly interested to see the addition of SDG 18, as the Canadian mission has just highlighted on UXO, as a response to a major domestic challenge. We believe that the core principles of meaningful participation and inclusion of civil society is really essential to achieve the transformative promise of the 2030 Agenda. Participation of civil society is crucial in preparing implementation plans, as well as processes for policy and legislation, including implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Many local civil society organizations are deeply embedded in their communities and maintain trusted relationships with those people who are often marginalized, such as younger or older people, persons with disabilities, LGBTI, indigenous communities, and other minority groups. In order to truly deliver on the core principle of leaving no one behind, which has been highlighted, it is crucial that the process is open and inclusive to all communities. We also believe that civil society organizations are able to contribute additional information for the policy formulation process. We would like to ask, therefore, the Government of Lao PDR to please clarify a little more what engagement have you undertaken and what mechanisms have been put in place to ensure that all voices are heard. And furthermore, what plans does your government have to follow up on the presentation of the VNR afterwards at the national and subnational levels, particularly with those social groups that are most often marginalized? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Major Group, and now I invite His Excellency the Minister to briefly respond, please not more 2 minutes, to the comments and questions from the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I mean, the challenge is bigger than implementing SDG. To sum up in two minutes, for the questions regarding the challenge as LDC and LDCs, I think LDCs is already have enough challenge, but you are both LDCs and LLDCs. That is a double challenge that we have to overcome. But the major challenge here is, I think, the lack of equality in distributions of benefits across the country. This is something that the Lao government attaches great importance that we need to address. Lao as a landlocked developing countries, but we are striving to become a kind of transit countries and try to be a connectivity hub as we sit in the at the center of our transit countries. As regard sustainable investment, the government has a policy to promote growth, green growth. That really reflects how investment would meet the standard that ensures sustainability and especially environmental protection. As regard to streamlining SDG, I think in my presentation I have already outlined that SDG formulation coincides with the formulations of our national socio-economic development plan. So it was pretty easy for us to translate the SDG target and indicators into our national socio-economic development directly. How to balance tourism and environment in Luang Prabang. I think Luang Prabang have a clear standard as a World Heritage Site. So we first, of course, we have to strictly adhere to the principle, to the regulations imposed by international standard as a World Heritage Site. But at the same time, as we promote ecotourism, culture tourism, that also, in a sense, we try to balance the visitors coming to the city, and at the same time, they should also participate in the protections of environment. The challenge as implementing SDG 18, of course, the major challenge is funding, because funding is if it requires, today we have roughly $30 million to fund and survey, clearance and victim assistance, but that's still well short of the demand that we need. On NGO questions, we have a roundtable process that is pursue a principle of participatory. I mean, every year, in every end of the year, we organize a roundtable where we can provide a forum for interaction between the government, development partners, as well as civil society, who are stakeholders in development agenda in our country. So I think that is a good opportunity for civil society in the countries to take part and contribute to our national development. With that, I thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, the delegates, for your interest and question.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lao People's Democratic Republic for the statement. I also thank delegations for their valuable contribution. I regret that due to the time constraint, not all those wishing to take the floor were able to interview. I now briefly pause the meeting to allow the podium to be rearranged in order to take up the next voluntary national review on our program of work. I thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the forum will now hear the National Voluntary Review by Senegal, and I have the honor to invite His Excellency Mame Thierno Dieng, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development, to make a presentation. The floor is yours, Mr. Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hope that the time constraints aren't going to prevent me from telling you everything that Senegal has done to achieve these Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to begin by thanking ECOSOC for its constant support for us in producing this report. And I would also like to thank the United Nations Development Programme for its regular and constant support for my country in its development efforts. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed, the High-Level Forum this year has a relevant theme of transforming towards resilient societies, and this gives my country, Senegal, an opportunity to express its commitment and share its experience in the process of implementing the 2030 Agenda. Senegal will engage in this peer review exercise and the sharing of best practices to address the challenges and the constraints that could hold back the harmonious march towards achieving the SDGs. Producing reports has brought together all of the sections and sectors that are involved in this work, and that is to say the administration, civil society, local governments, the private sector, the parliament, national institutions, research institutions, everyone, that is to say, involved in implementing and following up on sustainable development. Senegal's political commitment was shown very early on through inclusive participation on the part of all necessary stakeholders. Analyzing the level of alignment of the SDGs with the reference policy in Senegal, that is to say the Senegal Emerging Plan, has shown that 77% of the SDG targets overlap. Now, the PSE, this plan, is based around 3 pillars. The first pillar is structural reform of the economy, but the second pillar is the most important one in terms of what we are discussing today. That is to say, the development of human capital, social protection, and mainstreaming all of this within sustainable development. And then the third pillar concerns good governance. Now, Senegal has already taken steps to adapt its governance to achieving the SDGs. First of all, by setting up a national conference on sustainable development, which is opened and closed each year by His Excellency the President Macky Sall. And also, the country institutionalized a dedicated minister, that is to say, one for environment and sustainable development. On top of that, we have the strengthening of an existing institution, the Environmental, Economic and Social Council. What's more, in the local government policy, among the competencies that were handed down to the local level, sustainable development is included among those. All of these efforts to improve government are based on the principle of the constitutional right to development, which was adopted in the constitutional adopted by Senegal and proposed by the President Macky Sall in 2015. Environment and sustainable development education has also been integrated into the school curriculum. Ladies and gentlemen, Senegal stands next to the Sahel. It has a vast surface area with an estimated population of more than 15 million inhabitants in 2018.
That is to say, some 400 plus Human Development Index. Economic growth was 6.8 in 2017 for the third consecutive year, where we saw growth higher than 6%. These economic results is based on the Ps3 plan, which stimulated and drove economic activity and the private sector. The effects of growth on employment and poverty are extremely evident. There is a 47% poverty rate, according to the 2011 figures, with a lot of disparity between rural and urban areas, that is to say 60% and 25% respectively. And an effort needs to be made to ensure that the fruits of development are enjoyed equally by all. In terms of infant mortality, malaria and malnutrition are still among the chief causes of infant mortality. Progress has been less significant in maternal, neonatal and reproductive health due to the high cost, relative cost of these services for the population. The need to address poverty, social exclusion and inequalities is a major priority for Senegal. Achieving the 6, 7, 11, 12 and 15 SDG targets will substantially contribute to eradicating poverty in all its forms due to its strategic nature. With this in mind, Senegal has launched several innovative programs since 2015. There is a universal healthcare coverage program which aims to ensure equal access to good quality medical care based on the principle of free delivery of service. And the first tranche has enjoyed this, that is to say, children aged 0 to 5 years of age. There is the family payment system that has been set up to combat social inequalities and improve the most vulnerable stratas of society's lot. Thanks to this, there was a 43.9% healthcare coverage in 2017. By expanding this to older children as well, the healthcare coverage rate should further increase in the years to come to reach, in 2021, a level of 51% of the population covered through this community mutual insurance setup. On the SDGs, it should be noted that when it comes to access to water and sanitation, Senegal is continuing efforts to achieve the targets in water and sanitation and reducing inequalities between rural and urban areas, even if this needs substantial investment. The government in 2015 launched a very original, ambitious program through which several of the SDGs are going to be achieved. This is the Urgent Community Development Program. The aim is to address basic needs where they are most urgent, and the results are already being felt of that. Implementing this program, coupled with access to water and sanitation and activities in the rural development strategy, have made it possible to increase the access to water to 94%. There has been a slight increase between 2015 and 2017, going from 98 to 98.5% in 2016, and then 98.8% in 2017. In rural areas, the overall water access rate is now 99.5% in 2016, and even higher in 2017. The access rate to drinking water is also estimated to be about 99% in rural areas. The action plan for integrated access to water resources is part of the cross-border program, which is currently in its second phase of implementation. When it comes to access to energy, there are two problems. First of all, there is the promotion of renewable energy. Ultimately, with solar energy stations, we are going to be able to produce 30% of our energy through these solar power stations. And that is because we know that the major cause of climate change is the use of fossil fuels, which is why it is necessary to promote renewable energies to address this. And Senegal is committed to going down this path. What's more, we've also made great efforts to make electricity accessible for the rural population. There is a national rural electrification agency which has made a great deal of progress in access to electricity. The proportion of people with access to electricity has increased in 2016 and 2017 and is now at 68%. Including 36% in rural areas. The rural electrification rate was set at 40% in 2017. And these results are due to the effective implementation of the rural electrification strategy based on an operational mechanism constituted out of the various stakeholders. However, better adapted policies to drive progress in these areas should be encouraged by strengthening human capacity when it comes to planning, managing, and driving good research, because this is what's going to address the needs of the population. Research isn't an activity in and of itself for academics. It needs to be something that addresses the problems that are affecting the population, and that's exactly what we're doing when it comes to electrification. For sustainable cities, Senegal is currently implementing a national urbanization policy. To improve the conditions of living conditions in cities, we've launched a modernization program for cities entitled Promoville. The implementation of the urbanization and improvement strategy should involve mobilizing resources and building capacities of those involved. It is also necessary to strengthen the regulation of air quality management and waste management and recycling. Senegal is one of the very rare countries in sub-Saharan Africa that has this, what we call the Center for Air Quality Management, which is able to say what the air pollution degree is in Dakar, for example. And once you know the degree of air pollution, you can put in place solutions to prevent respiratory diseases. In 2007, we adopted a 10-year plan for sustainable consumption and production to reduce post-harvest losses in rural areas, and this continues to be a major source of food insecurity. Senegal, through this plan, has strengthened post-harvest equipment and processing in various parts of the country. However, this access needs to, we need to focus on sustainable production methods, strengthening food security, and the fair sharing and equitable sharing of the benefits of this. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, achieving land degradation neutrality for the sustainable management of forests and biodiversity is also a priority for the country to be integrated into its planning. Senegal has come up with a national strategy for sustainable land management with an integrated financial strategy that was validated in the Interministerial Council. It has also built upon a great deal of experience as a country engaged in the land degradation neutrality process launched under the Framework Convention on Desertification in 2015. Also, with Morocco, we are involved in the 3 S's initiative: sustainability, security, and stability. The spirit of this initiative is to establish a very close link between the risks posed by migration, instability, and sustainable development, and so it addresses the serious issue of desertification, because, as I said earlier, we cannot force people to live on land that has become desert. If they can't live there, then they are very inclined to migrate. So all of these things are related. Major initiatives are being undertaken. 2 of those include the Great Green Wall, which is a transnational organization which aims to hold back the advance of the desert. And we also have the eco-towns and eco-villages, and we're pleased to learn that there is a program which has produced 14,000 eco-villages in Senegal that is part of this 3S's initiative. Sectoral strategies, particularly that in the agriculture, electricity, energy and mining sectors, are also in line with this. Major challenges include fighting the trafficking and smuggling of forest resources, and Senegal has done everything it can to most effectively protect the integrality of its forest resources by pooling all of its security forces, the police, the national police and the army, to combat deforestation and to strengthen regulation against this deforestation practice. The fundamental commitment to leave no Senegalese person behind is the driver of the government to engage in social development policies for vulnerable groups, but also in public policies aiming to reduce inequalities, achieve good governance and demography, peace and security. All of this allows me to say that Senegal has shown the will and taken practical steps to allow it to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, and perhaps even to go beyond some of those goals. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
I thank Mr. Minister for his presentation, and I now invite the delegation to have an interactive dialogue. We have just a few minutes left, and I will invite the distinguished representative of Guinea to have the floor. Please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First and foremost, I should like to congratulate the Senegalese delegation on what they're doing and the preparation of this VNR. It's very instructive, very full, and I think very telling. I think in the framework of South-South cooperation, the African countries to the south of Sahara in particular have to promote exchanges of experience by having a point on the agenda of the Joint Cooperation Committee, so that there can be a point, an item on the exchange of experience regarding the implementation of the SDGs. And in this way, each country would be able to learn bilaterally of the experience in other countries. I think this would really drive forward the attainment of the SDGs to the south of Sahara in Africa. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Guyana and Guinea. And now I invite the representative of workers in trade unions. Please, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The report of the Senegalese government says that the SDGs should be attained to the tune of about 27% by 2030, a problem affecting many people in Senegal is the wash problem. We need to help people and help them when it comes to neglected tropical diseases as well, including their various actors, including civil society and those who are most sidelined. When it comes to women in particular, the lack of water and health and sanitation services certainly affects health and security here. The ministries and their partners in implementation have to involve young women and adult women so that it's possible to understand local problems and find solutions to defend their rights, their dignity, their safety. How is the government going to attain this? Well, how's it going to go about it? Then there are other very important areas, health, the law, well-being of everybody. On education, how does the Senegalese government intend to implement inclusive education? And what are the specific measures taken by the government in order to combat violence against girls, women, and the disabled? A more inclusive a platform for civil society is needed, including unions, and we need data that is deaggregated when it comes to disability, age, gender. And the government has to look at social plans to reduce poverty. What measures does it have in mind better to ensure that the SDGs chime with emerging Senegalese plans? And how is it possible to ensure an approach that involves young people, girls, women, and the disabled, as well as union organizations? Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Works and Trade Unions. And now I invite His Excellency Mame Thiera Dieng to briefly respond. I'm sorry if I spelled.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Perhaps it's something that's a bit unusual for me, so there might be some pronunciation problems. So I'd like to thank the speaker and say how relevant the description was. And as we're under pressure of time, we don't have enough room to go into certain things, but some are already in the text that I think speaks clearly there. When it comes to an exchange of experience, well, this is the first thing that I looked at and buckled down to when I said that we have subjected ourselves to peer review and that we offer and ask for an exchange of experience so that we can learn lessons and benefit one from another. We would start from the countries that are closest to us, Guinea. All those countries with borders with Senegal. We're very open when it comes to an exchange of experience here, because together we have to achieve these SDGs. Then many issues were raised: girls, women, children, neglected tropical diseases, measures to be taken to ensure that education is inclusive, social programs. Perhaps it hasn't proved possible to show up this in my statement, but in the text, if you look at each of these points, there is a reply on it. When it comes, firstly, to a very specific area, to me, I am a doctor. When you talk of neglected tropical diseases, most of these affect those who are vulnerable, and Senegal is one of the most advanced countries when it comes to dealing with neglected tropical diseases, because our Ministry for Health has a unit which is particularly dedicated to these diseases. And Senegal is one of the countries which has been able to provide reliable statistics on these neglected tropical diseases, and these statistics will be the basis of objective research. Much information has been worked out on these diseases in Senegal. When it comes to women and girls, I think that our country has taken great strides forward in according importance to women, because we know that development cannot take place excluding women. First of all, we need comprehensive approaches preparing for all elections. Government has endeavoured to boost the promotion of women more than in the past to bring about equality amongst men and women. We're doing everything that is necessary to ensure that women do have their rightful place in society, and the same holds good for young girls and children. Everything that we've done under the PSC is described in order to render the universal access to quality care and education, and children are in the front line there. That's something we wish to achieve. And then when it comes to inclusive education, the rate of schooling is extremely high in Senegal. 1,000... We are not seeing villages neglected anymore. And people move more than 500 kilometers to carry out secondary school studies. I think the efforts need to be made there. When it comes to our social programs, we want to address the sad issue of inequality of opportunity, and we are going to do what is needed to ensure that the PSC in practice does take into account the SDGs, and so that we can attain our objectives at a satisfactory rate. I think time has run out. I trust that I've answered the gist of the questions, and it would perhaps prove possible to continue our discussions after the session.
For the statement, I also thank the delegation for their valuable contribution. We have come to the end of the 9th set of voluntary national reviews, and today I want to thank the interpreters for their late work. Also, presentation of voluntary national reviews will continue tomorrow morning starting at 9 a.m. here in conference room 4. The meeting is adjourned.